Hello, welcome to the Tea Party Hardy channel. This video was made as a follow-up to the video for the riots in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. I listed a bunch of cases but didn't have the exact details in front of me. Now I do. So, let's take a look at some of these details with the question of where were the riots? Because we've got riots in Minneapolis and Los Angeles for the death of that black fellow who had his neck with the foot on it from the cops in Minneapolis, by the what cops, so now it becomes a national story. Tragedy, yes. National story, only because it's black and white. Let me show you. It's as simple as black and white. Married couple, 85 and 86, shot dead at Delaware Veterans Cemetery. This was May 10th of 2020. Here's the nice young fellow. Sure, he was headed off to college, like that fellow in Ferguson was. Poor innocent little guy. Yeah, anyways, so this is what he did. A married Maryland couple in their 80s were killed at a Delaware cemetery by a gunman whom authorities later found dead, according to reports. Sheldon C. Francis, 29. There he is. This is rough, man. This is really rough. Sheldon C. Francis, 29, gunned down an 85-year-old woman and her 86-year-old husband Friday morning on the grounds of a Delaware Veterans Memorial Cemetery in Bear. Apparently that's a town in Philadelphia. In Maryland. The woman was pronounced dead at the scene while her husband died Saturday at an area hospital, police said. The couple's identities haven't been released. They were later on. I read an interview with their son, who was, needless to say, a little distraught that his parents went to visit his brother's grave and they were assassinated. And one of the things he mentioned was, in his mind, he couldn't decide nor remove the picture of his head of who died first and who saw the other one die. The woman was pronounced dead at the scene while her husband died Saturday at an area hospital. The couple's identity, police said officers chased Francis around noon into a wooded area where they exchanged gunfire. He was shot. Well, go away. He was, where did we go? Police said chased around into the woods area. Yeah. He was found dead from a gunshot wound around 4 p.m. The Brennan Estates neighborhood, which borders the Veterans Cemetery, authorities said. It's unclear whether Francis shot himself or was struck by police in the shootout, the police said. So, I'm sure they know by now. So he just randomly targeted these two. Where were the riots? That's my question as the follow-up to the last one. Where were the riots? Black men targeting white people. Where were the riots? Now let's get more details to finish up those empty loopholes I made in the other video. Central Park dog cases, Covington 2.0. Now, let's take a look at the transcript here. News accounts have reportedly characterized Ms. Cooper. It's pretty trippy that her last name is Cooper and so is the guy that she called the cops on. They're both named Cooper. Ms. Cooper as having threatened Mr. Cooper is what the news said. That is the opposite of what happened. We know this because Mr. Cooper's helpful Facebook post on the matter, from which is quoted, "Me. Look, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want. But you're not going to like it." Her. What's that? This is what Mr. Cooper wrote on his Facebook. Talk about it, admitting to it. Oh my gosh. Me to the dog. "Come here, puppy." Her. "He won't come to you." Me. "Oh, we'll see about that." "I pull out the dog treats I carry. For just such intransigence, I didn't even get a chance to toss any treats to the pooch before Karen scrambled to grab the dog." Where's the riots? She lost her job. She's labeled a racist. She was rude enough to not keep her dog on a leash in the park like she's supposed to. I'm sorry, that's not a complicated rule. It's not difficult. She lost her job. She's labeled a racist in the national press because she called the cops because she felt threatened. Well, here's what Mr. Cooper said. "Look, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, but you're not going to like it. I'm pretty sure that is threatening. If that's not threatening, then what is it? Oh, I know. Let's ask Biden camp. He's just joking. People don't usually yell when they're joking, except for Sam Kinison, but he's no longer with us, is he? Me, we'll see about that. I pulled out the dog treats I carry for just such intransigence. What kind of sick puppy carries dog treats when he doesn't have a dog? And he did threaten her, and he writes it in Facebook. But she's the bad guy. As Tim Pool put it, they're both the bad guys. They're both weenies. But he definitely did threaten her. He threatened to take her dog. Oh, but don't worry. She's a bad guy. She's a racist. And her dog was taken from her. Where's the riots? Where's the riots? Remember I mentioned Douglas Irby? Now, this happened a while ago. In fact, 10 years ago now. Man hold a water nozzle. Killed by the Long Beach police. California authorities responded to a report of a person with a gun in the 5300 block of East Ocean Boulevard of Belmont neighborhood at 440. Really? Responded to a report of a person with a gun. Just like that poor girl. What the blank? Just like that poor person in Canada, the stormtrooper girl. She's a stormtrooper. She's dressed as a Star Wars stormtrooper in Canada on Star Wars Day. Not the real Star Wars Day. Disney's Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Real Star Wars Day is May 25th. And you can watch the video. I have it on my channel. There's other people that have on their channels. The Canadian cops wrestle her to the ground, bloody her nose, because they were called because she had a gun. She had a Star Wars gun on Star Wars Day in front of a Star Wars restaurant comic book shop that she was promoting. Officers saw a man believed to be armed with a handgun and took cover, but while waiting for backup officers, an officer-involved shooting occurred. The suspect was declared dead. He was sitting on the patio because he got drunk, and he didn't want to drive drunk, so he sat on the patio of his friend's house in Long Beach, and he's just goofing off playing with the nozzle. The neighbors, the goody two-shoe neighbors, who live in a state where, there's all these gun laws. If you don't have gun laws like this, then nobody freaks out. Arizona, I'm talking to you. Nobody freaks out over there. Okay, so then they call the cops. The cops get a block away. They never ever go up to him. They never talk to him. They get behind their doors in their cars, cruisers as they call them, and then they shoot him with a shotgun and pistols. They never talked to him. They never addressed him. Where were the riots? Where were the riots? Here's a man killed innocently by the cops way more aggressively and brutally than the other fellow in Minnesota. Where were the riots? Huh? Where's all the Long Beach riots? Oh, you want Long Beach riots? I have Long Beach riots. Black teenagers convicted in beating of 3 white women. This is the New York Times, and this is why the New York Times has the bad reputation that it does. Now, again, this was a long time ago. This was 2007. But where were the riots? Long Beach, California, January 26, 2007. A juvenile court judge found 9 black teenagers guilty Friday of beating 3 young white women with pumpkins, newspapers, and a skateboard. They hit the girl so hard with the skateboard that they dislocated her eye and broke the skateboard. In an attack that has shined a spotlight on racial tensions here, where were the riots? In a packed courtroom, the judge, Gibson W. Lee, announced felony assault convictions against the 8 girls and 1 boy, ranging in age from 14 to 18, and the acquittal of a 12-year-old girl. 8 of the teenagers were convicted of hate crimes. Wow, that's really serious. They deserved it after all that. They broke a skateboard. They hit them so many times. Frank Williams Jr., one of the defense lawyers, said he was disheartened and puzzled and grief-stricken. The defense lawyer, of the people that beat the girls. The one who did the beating. Their lawyer's disheartened. That's why the New York Times is interviewing him. The verdicts will be appealed, he said. But he added that he did not have much confidence in the justice appeal system. They were just convicted of beating these white girls. And he's upset with the courts. The defendants' parents said their children were denied their rights. They had the full case. They had the full trial. Noting, unlike Douglas Irby, nope, he was assassinated. And unlike those 80-year-old couple at their son's gravestone, the defendant's parents said their children were denied their rights, noting they have been in custody since their arrest on October 31st in California. There's no bail for juveniles. How the times have changed. Now nobody has bail. Y'all get out for free now. In California, and I guess New York as well, because we copied them. Yay. The mother of the 12-year-old and the 3 convicted teenagers wept. Why is the New York Times covering the beaters and not the victims? Because the victims are white. Don't be stupid. It's the New York Times. My heart is heavy. It hurts to know your kids didn't do anything, and you can't do anything to help them. They beat the living crap out of 3 white girls. And Mrs. Hardison, 46, outside the courthouse. Helicopters and dozens of satellite news trucks, along with hundreds of defendants. Supporters. Oh, but did they riot? And the verdicts in what has become known as the Halloween incident. Police officers summoned riot gear, just in case, guarded the building in the 5th floor of the courthouse. When the news of the verdicts was made, it was outside mostly African-American crowds. Reacted with anger. How dare you convict our children of beating your children? Stop that. We're allowed to do that. That's why the New York Times is interviewing us and not you. Get it straight. Convictions amounted to mob justice and a lynching. Oh, of course it does. Of course it does. A full trial is mob justice. And a lynching is after a full trial. Yeah. Judge Lee will hear victim impact statements on Wednesday before sentencing the youth. They face a minimum of at-home probation to several years in a California Youth Authority facility up to age 25. Long Beach, a suburb of 20 miles from downtown Los Angeles, has a history of racial unrest. Riots broke in the high schools in 1967, and during the 1992 street riots prompted by Rodney King spilled over into Long Beach. That's a long spill, by the way. That's a very long spill. It's like a 15-mile spill. The Halloween attack happened in Bixby, a section of Long Beach, a well-to-do, diverse neighborhood where children say they like to go trick-or-treating because the residents give whole candy bars. So in other words, kids that aren't from that neighborhood like to go over there and mooch the candy bars. Fine. It's a gimme free candy day anyways. But do you like the way they put it in the New York Times? The Halloween attack happened in Bixby, section Long Beach, well-to-do, diverse neighborhood. No, it's not. Where children like to go trick-or-treating because residents give the whole candy bars. The young women said a group of boys sexually taunted. Now see, it says the young women, not the victims. If it were reversed, it would say victims. We know this because they're treating the beaters like the victims through this whole article. Boys sexually taunted them as they entered a haunted house organized by area homeowners. They tried to ignore them. They said, "Oh, believe all women." No, not New York Times. But on their way out, they encountered the boys again. Within a few minutes, the women said they were beaten, scratched, kicked, and pummeled with newspapers, lemons, and miniature pumpkins as someone yelled, "I hate white people," adding an explicative. Once again, 2007. Now they would actually print the explicative. At a news conference last week, 2 of the victims, Laura Schneider and Michelle Smith, both 19, described the assault and its aftermath. Wow, we're finally getting to the part of the article where the victims get to speak. Mrs. Schneider had dropped out of school, and a 3rd victim, Lauren Heim, is awaiting surgery to repair 12 facial fractures. But their kids didn't do nothing wrong. Didn't you hear what they said in the earlier part of the article? You know, where they were interviewed up at the top, because they're more important, clearly. Miss Smith said, how many? 12 fractures. And she thought Miss Schneider was dead when she saw her unconscious on the ground. What would you think? Miss Smith said. No, she didn't say. She asked. God, these people are horrible with their grammar. After the verdicts, Doug Otto, a lawyer for the victims, you're going to actually take time to interview them? Why? said his clients were relieved and looking forward to making their impact statements to the judge. But he said, worried about their safety. Well, I wonder why. Throughout the hearings, the assistant DA hailed the prosecutor's star witness, Kayana Alford, as a hero. Miss Alford, who is black, testified that she saw the entire attack and that despite the darkness, the crowd of people in the street, and the fact that some of the defendants were wearing the same T-shirt, she was sure she had identified the correct people as the attackers. There were just that many attackers. Prosecutors accused the defendant's friends of trying to bully Miss Alford after her testimony by rear-ending her car. Did you know rear-ending cars is just considered bullying by the New York Times? If it's black on white. Brian Sheeran, a deputy district attorney who oversees the Long Beach juvenile prosecution, and Miss Alford, was leaving Long Beach because of the intimidation. Yeah, seems reasonable. Throughout the trial, critics said the identification of the suspects was severely flawed. The police never presented the victims of Miss Alford with a lineup or photographs included. We got them as they drove her to the supermarket parking lot and the scene of the attacks to identify the suspects. Defense lawyers did not dispute that the white women were attacked. Well, gee, with 12 fractures, you really don't have a lot of leeway, do you? But they called it a high school fight. Good God, where did you go to high school? That got out of control. It wasn't a high school. It was freaking Halloween. Got out of control. Where do you go to high school that 12 fractures in your face is freaking high school fight? Indicated that the victims were being attacked by boys, not girls. Well, they didn't step forward. Ms. Williams and the other defense lawyers pointed to the testimony of two other witnesses whose accounts differed from Mrs. Alford's. They also said the three women initially fought with the group. You mean after their car was rammed? And that there was evidence that the victims had been drinking alcohol that night. See, victim shaming in the New York Times. The women denied drinking and provoking the attack. Yeah, did they scream, "We hate black people," like the black guys screamed, "We hate white people"? No, that never came up. Don't think so. There is no way for her to have seen what she saw, Miss Williams said of Miss Alford. See, so again, they end defending the people that just got convicted. So anyways, what happened to them? Where were the riots? 3 young white women went to a haunted house on Halloween in 2006. On their way to the haunted house, a black teenage male grabbed his crotch and shouted, "Are you up with it?" Unfortunately, the girls didn't take this as a sign to get out of the area immediately. They went to the haunted house. On the way out, they were obscenely accosted by the same black male. As they tried to get away from the blacks, they were attacked. An estimated 30 black men who accosted them, and a group of black girls attacked the 3 white girls. The blacks were shouting, "F the white whores." Where were the riots? This is a follow-up. Where were the riots? One news article reports the case stemmed from last year's Halloween attack on the city's affluent Bixby section, which is noted as elaborate Halloween decorations. Witnesses said that the black youths yelled racial insults and beat the 2 19-year-old white women and a 21-year-old. One woman had more than a dozen facial fractures, and she's recovering reconstructive surgery. Another was knocked unconscious and then beaten with a skateboard, punched and kicked. In January, 8 Long Beach girls and 1 man, ages 13 to 18, were convicted of felony assault, as the New York Times reported. And then, 8 of them were also convicted of hate crimes enhancement. They were sentenced to probation. And house arrest, spending about 3 months in custody during their trials. Where were the riots? I ask you, where were the riots? Probation. House arrest. The worst injured white girl had 13 skull fractures. One of her eye sockets had to be reattached to her skull. She will not be able to lie down for 3 months as the delicate bones in her skull fuse back together. She will have to sleep in some sort of restraints so that her head stays vertical. Meanwhile, the blacks who caused her injuries are laughing and hanging out with their homies. The ones who broke the skateboard over the victim's head, a young male just 6 weeks short of being 18, helped beat the women. He was not charged as an adult, and neither was his twin sister, who joined in the attacks on the white girls. Despite the severity of the crime, the 5 worst offenders got probation and no jail time. Despite the severity of the injuries of one girl, they were not charged with attempted murder. No, it was just a high school fight. Didn't you hear the lawyer? The parents of the white girls started an effort to recall the judge. Targeted old white people. Where were the riots? Threatens her dog. Brags about it in Facebook. Who's the racist? Maybe both of them. You know? Holding a nozzle to sober up, goofing off on a patio. Never spoken to by the cops, never knew they existed. Turned into Swiss cheese. Where were the riots? New York Times clearly knows who the good guys are and the bad guys are in this case, don't they? Oh, they were convicted. You notice there's not another New York Times story saying that oh, by the way, they never got any jail time. But which is okay, because didn't you read the mother's statement? They didn't do anything. They were completely innocent. And that's my follow-up to the Minnesota example with details. We'll see you in the future.